Since we were born, we have told stories. It's how for generations we have communicated our thoughts and experiences to each other. More importantly, stories capture the human spirit in every form: loss, grief, joy, and wonder about why we're here or where we will go. Stories reflect our histories, expose our present, and guide us into the future. Now imagine a world where those stories are no longer told just by us. What are the implications if those stories that shape our deepest beliefs are written by artificial intelligence? OpenAI describes ChatGPT's training process as reading a large amount of existing text and learning how words tend to appear in context with other words. It then uses what it has learned to predict the next most likely word that might appear in response to a user request. By training on a dataset with a large amount of literature, AI's ability to predict the common patterns with words allows it to mimic human language with striking quality. And with AI's ability to sound human-like, the field of AI and storytelling has rapidly expanded. AI writing companies such as Sudowrite, Jasper, and WriteSonic market a new type of writing that is easy, fast, and straightforward, if you pay for their services. Some describe AI as a democratization of ideas, information, and human consciousness. Anyone can now be a writer and generate countless books with a few clicks of a mouse. But with all this hype, is sounding human-like compelling enough to write with AI? What happens when we use AI for research? One of the strengths of AI is that it can quickly summarize large amounts of data. But OpenAI also states that ChatGPT is not free from bias and stereotypes. The model is skewed towards Western views and performs best in English. When I tried to use the free version of ChatGPT for research, it clarified that it cannot pull direct quotes from sources or reference them. AI can be used for illustrative purposes, but it cannot provide 100% verified information because there is a disconnect from the original source material. Because of this disconnect, AI can make up information. The fact that AI does not cite its sources also makes checking the accuracy of its information more challenging. Proper research is vital to write stories that challenge harmful biases and stereotypes rather than perpetuate them. Seeking research from real people and drawing from your own personal experience can create powerful and authentic representation that people will recognize, connect with, and feel seen. AI is way faster than I'll ever be. I struggle to write even a few times a week. But is there truly a benefit to writing faster? Of course, we'll be able to churn out more content, but when we use AI to write more and more of the content, we use less of our writing and creative skills. One thing to be aware of is that any idea discussed with AI may be used as training data. OpenAI states on their website and in their privacy policy that the data you put in is used by ChatGPT to learn. You can turn off chat history, but OpenAI still retains your conversations for 30 days before it is truly deleted. One of the features of generative AI is that it can mimic standardized styles of writing. When it comes to how our literary styles differentiate from AI, author Vahini Vara adds that writing is an attempt to clarify what the world is like from where I stand in it. That definition of writing couldn't be more different from the way AI produces language, by sucking up billions of words from the internet and spitting out an imitation. Nothing about that process reflects an attempt at articulating an individual perspective. When we rely on something else to write for us, we stop challenging ourselves and risk our voices and style becoming stagnant and redundant. Vara goes on to conclude that, if my writing is an expression of my particular conscience, I'm the only one capable of it. Just like the visual style of a film, cinematographer Roger Deakins quoted Freddie Francis, who said, "There is good cinematography and bad cinematography, and then there's a cinematography that's right for the movie." For Deakins, his voice is the visual style of the film. He is a great example of someone who uses the principles he has learned, but lets the theme of each film guide the visual style, the cinematography that is right for the movie. Each story is different and thus needs a different style of writing to support the theme. Writing stories that have clear themes definitely takes time to learn. I feel like I've only just grasped the importance of a clear theme, but everything in a story should work together. And when you create a cohesive story message, you create powerful meaning. If we use generic AI writing styles that sound good on the surface, we lose the opportunity to craft the unique writing style that is fit for your unique story. There are still a lot of questions around copyright and AI. Author Ian Bogost, one author whose books were used in an online pirated database called Books3, which was used by Meta to train their AI, argues that when successful, art exceeds its creator's plans. Perhaps Meta is an unappealing reader, but then, who am I to say what my work is good for, how it might benefit someone, even a near trillion-dollar company? To bemoan this one unexpected use for my writing is to undermine all the other unexpected uses for it. Once we create art and release it to the world, of course, we cannot control what people will do with it. Some may draw inspiration from it to create their own works, others may copy, resell, or pirate your work. This has been happening since the dawn of creativity. But copyright helps promote derivative and inspired uses rather than uses that make it harder for creatives to support themselves. If we don't hold trillion-dollar companies accountable for copying and ingesting creatives' works, then that undermines the power of copyright law and disrupts the revenue streams of thousands of creators. And in a society that has a long history of underpaying creatives, just like any other profession, strong and effective copyright laws are essential to ensure that creatives can create a livelihood. Hello Future Me has a great video on copyright and AI that I highly recommend, and I'll link below. To illustrate what feedback ChatGPT could give, I had it analyze 2 different short film scripts that I wrote in my sophomore and junior year of college. One of the things that I know that I struggle with as a writer is defining a clear theme. And because of that, I ended up having several other issues in my narrative for my short film Blackout, such as a passive protagonist and vague dialogue. I'll link the completed short film version of Blackout down below if you'd like to quickly watch it, but I will also include clips and summarize bits of the story to analyze the feedback. To start, I asked ChatGPT to identify my theme. ChatGPT identified themes around self-acceptance, fear of exposure, and societal pressure related to being an elemental, which is someone who has forbidden superpowers in my script. For Blackout, the challenge I had was that I prioritized both character and world building and didn't have enough time for both. But it was still surprising that ChatGPT missed a key part of my story. Blackout was only 6 pages long. What happens when you're trying to write a much longer story with maybe more complicated plots, character motivations, nuanced or less common themes? After clarifying the love story with ChatGPT, it offered new feedback on dialogue, conflict, Salem's character arc, and world building. The feedback was still very general and sometimes a bit redundant, such as use symbolic imagery related to light and darkness, mirroring Salem's internal conflict. For example, when she's struggling, the lights may flicker or dim, representing her inner turmoil. But ChatGPT did highlight some weaker elements that I felt were valid feedback, such as develop more intimate and open conversations between Salem and Kit that can touch upon their feelings and the challenges Salem faces. Introduce specific instances where societal pressures or prejudices directly impact Salem. Ensure that Salem undergoes a clear character arc, showing her growth and acceptance over time. When asking ChatGPT what the root issue was of these problems, it identified it as the narrative split between Salem's personal struggle and the broader world building of the elementals. While I agree that it is an issue, I personally think that the root cause of all of my narrative problems was not having a clear premise. Having a clear premise would have allowed me to tie both her powers and her sexuality together by knowing my ending. So I asked ChatGPT to identify a premise for me, and it generated embracing identity fosters acceptance. To compare, the premise I came up with was self-acceptance leads to power. This is a good example of how AI can be used to identify elements in your story, yet it still struggles to grasp the deeper meaning or nuance. Interestingly, when I asked for feedback on Artifact, my other uncompleted film script, ChatGPT seemed to understand my story better when I had already done the work to find a clear premise. This is feedback on how I could heighten the conflict with my main antagonist. Even without sharing much of the story, there is a noticeable specificity in the feedback. Even with multiple prompts, I was unable to get this level of feedback for Blackout. In its current state, AI is a powerful tool to help understand story and find inspiration, but the lure of its efficiency, convenience, and the fear of falling behind encourage an imbalanced use of the technology that can weaken our writing skills, creativity, and unique voices. Using AI in a balanced way for storytelling is paramount. AI can point you in the general direction for research, but it's necessary to validate that research to catch misinformation and bias. AI can be used for writing, but we risk creating disconnected themes and weakening our writing skills when we aren't creating those connections ourselves as writers. AI can provide sometimes actionable feedback on your story, but it may miss nuance as it did with mine. After all, your audience isn't a bunch of robots. Diversity in the feedback you receive is invaluable. Stories create empathy around the painful parts of life and are powerful tools in creating change. How can we grow if we do not write stories that acknowledge both the beauty and pain of our human existence? Now that it has been almost 2 years and the original hype around generative AI has died down a bit, AI's effects on our stories and an extension ourselves will go further unnoticed unless we keep discussing and analyzing the technology. Thank you so much for watching, and if you'd like to read more, I've linked all of my sources down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts to continue the conversation, and I'll see you next time. Bye!